Hi, hello, my name is Benjamin Ma, and today we're going to be talking about elderly care within horror movies. To begin, aging is not just a biological process, but something deeply shaped by social perception. As Judy Z. Segal explains, decline has become what Kenneth Burke calls a piety, a belief system where aging is expected to go hand in hand with deterioration naturally. So basically, in this sense, society does not simply observe aging, it organizes it into a narrative of loss and something that is inevitable. This cultural framing is reinforced by media and industries that treat old age as something to resist or to erase. So this connects to a broader idea that we consider normal is not fixed. Susan Wendell specifically argues that what our normal structure, function, and ability depend to some degree on the society in which the standards of normality are generated. So if normalcy is socially constructed, then bodies that fall outside of it, including aging and disabled bodies, are also socially produced as deviant. Specifically, horror cinema builds directly on this logic. Okay, so horror films often take societal fears for the time and render them visible through the body. Rather than presenting fear as something conceptual, horror films make it purely physical. The body becomes the site where anxieties about control, identity, and survival are expressed. This pattern can be seen across different historical moments. For example, during the Red Scare in the, I'm pretty sure, 1950s, fears of ideological infiltration were expressed through films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the body itself becomes the vessel for something foreign and uncontrollable. In more contemporary films like Get Out, this same fear shifts towards institutions and systems of power, where the body is again taken over, but this time in relation to racial exploitation. Similarly, fears of disease and contamination produce body horror, where the physical form deteriorates and mutates, as seen within David Cronenberg's The Fly. So in each case, the monstrous body reflects what society fears losing, whether that is autonomy, identity, or control. Now, within this framework, aging and disability occupy a particularly unstable position because they disrupt they disrupt ideas of the concept of normalcy within bodies. Wendell notes that people whose conditions are not recognized are often pressured to keep up a pretense of normality or are denied proper acknowledgement and care. At the same time, many individuals long to be recognized as disabled precisely because society refuses to adjust its expectations, forcing them to perform as if they were not struggling at all. This tension reveals that the problem is not the body itself, but the standard society has imposed onto it. Aging bodies are not inherently monstrous, but they are treated as such when they fail to align with ideals of independence and productivity. This distinction becomes especially clear when comparing the film The Father and the film The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is a horror movie. So both films depict dementia, yet they frame it in radically different ways. The Father, dementia is disorienting but not monstrous. The film immerses the viewer in a subjective experience of cognitive decline, creating confusion, repetition, and this instability without turning the character into a monstrous threat. The result is empathetic and tragic. You really feel for, oh my god, I forgot his name. You feel for him. You feel a lot of sympathy for the way that his character goes within the movie. However, in contrast, we have the horror found footage film, The Taking of Deborah Logan. So it frames similar symptoms as possession. The loss of control associated with dementia is exaggerated into something violent and supernatural. The body becomes unpredictable and dangerous, thus transforming this illness into a spectacle. This contrast shows how easily aging and illness can be pushed into horror depending on how they are framed by the creatives of the films. These films additionally reveal that these horrors do not emerge from the inevitability of aging alone, but from the conditions surrounding care. Caregiving within these films are often depicted as this overwhelming and emotionally draining act. In The Father, the daughter, played by the lovely actress Olivia Colman, struggles with burnout and guilt, highlighting the emotional toil of caregiving. We get one scene where she imagines smothering him to death, and as controversial and brutal as this and uncomfortable as this scene is, it is emotionally raw and real. Caretaking can be draining and can feel like this, basically. So in The Taking of Deborah Logan, we get a similar scene too. Care becomes entangled within surveillance as her decline is documented and consumed through filming. Her daughter, Sarah, is her caretaker, similar to Coleman in The Father. Multiple times throughout the film, you see her crack. When we first are introduced to Sarah, she is this bubbly, happy character, excited for this interview, but many times you see her just break down and sort of give you that raw and real, draining emotion that many caregivers have, as much as they don't want to admit it. One of them is that she argues with her mom, Deborah, to do this documentary because they really need the money for her medical bills and to keep the house that they're living in. Another film we can pull as example is the film The Visit, where the grandparents become unpredictable and threatening, turning a space of familial care into one of fear, attacking and subduing their grandparents to torment and mental deterioration. Horror exaggerates these dynamics, but they are rooted in these very anxieties about responsibility, patience, and the limits of care. So many horror films take this further by transforming the elderly body into something grotesque and uncontrollable. Films like The Taking of Deborah Logan, The Visit, X, and Hereditary depict older characters as these erratic, unstable, and even demonic characters. These portrayals often rely on exaggerated physicality, such as distorted movements or expressions, to signal a loss of coherence. The body appears to resist control, becoming something unpredictable and even threatening for the subjects. So with The Visit, it has scenes of grandparents crawling around at night, just really screaming. There's one where she's really munching down cookies and she says, Yahtzee! Deborah Logan, she has an unhinged jaw to eat children. Hereditary has the grandma as part of this demonic cult, and you see her lingering in the back. Also, her demonic cult worships this demon called Payman, who is a historically real demon, supposedly. And X, while it strays away from the demonic personas that many of these films apply, they are still psychotic and murder everyone. So in this sense, the elderly body is not just aging, it is reconstructed as monstrous. It becomes a visual shorthand for instability, reinforcing the idea that aging leads to a breakdown of both mind and self. These representations raise important ethical concerns by framing aging as grotesque or dangerous. Horror risks sort of reinforcing existing fears and prejudices. As Segal notes, ageism is quite unique in that it targets not only others but our future selves. It reflects a desire to distance ourselves from the inevitability of our own aging. Segal goes on to specifically state, ageist rhetoric includes not only these destructive acts of disregard and disrespect, but also microaggressions in the form of public representations of old people ubiquitously. Sure. So this can be through like passive aggressive birthday cards or salon adverts for skin therapy. So basically, when films repeatedly depict elderly individuals as burdens or threats, they contribute to cultural narratives that justify neglect and isolation. This is specifically significant given that many elderly individuals already face abandonment or lack of adequate care. Ultimately, what these films reveal is that the fear of aging is not simply a fear of death, but a fear of the process leading up to it. Aging is associated with dependency, this loss of autonomy, and a social isolation. In films like Ty West's X, A24's X, the absence of care/caretaker leads to extreme isolation, which is then linked to their instability and violence. In others, such as Deborah, Logan, and The Visit, moments of tenderness are interrupted by sudden loss of control, suggesting that the horror lies in unpredictability rather than constant monstrosity. At the same time, the father offers an alternative by focusing on empathy rather than fear, showing the decline does not have to be framed in horror. So, all in all, if horror externalizes societal fears through the monstrous body, then the question becomes what these fears reveal. While these films present aging and illness as terrifying, the deeper horror may lie elsewhere. A lot of other horror films would be like The Rule of Jenny Penn from 2024, The Substance 2025, The Relic 2020, Get Out in a Way 2017. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is probably like the founding father of this genre from 1962, and The Front Room from 2024, along with many, many, many others. The real horror is not about the aging body itself, but the very systems that fail to support it. A lack of institutional care, emotional resources, and ethical clarity transforms vulnerability into fear. In this sense, horror does not simply exaggerate reality, it exposes the conditions that make aging feel terrifying in the first place.